Hey guys, welcome to D Now. I'm so excited that we're kicking this thing off and the time has finally come, and hopefully you're settling into your homes and you're getting to know your leader a little bit. Hopefully you've even been able to enjoy some games and activities together, and I just trust that this is going to be an awesome weekend, and we are so glad that you came. And if you're a visitor with us this weekend, thank you for coming. I hope that you leave this weekend feeling that this is a place where you belong, a place where you're cared for, and a place where you can ask questions about the faith, about God, and get real answers. And so we are just glad that you're here, and I am excited for what's going to happen this weekend. We're going to kick off the first session here. Our theme, as I've said before, and you'll be hearing about all weekend, our theme is imitator. And basically where we're getting that theme from is found right in Scripture, Ephesians chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. And I want to just start off by kind of setting the tone for the weekend and reading those verses. And just make a couple points, and then I'm going to hand it off to your leader at your home. They're really going to be the ones that are teaching you this weekend, and I just want to have a brief introduction each session. So Ephesians chapter 5, verses 1 and 2 says this. The Apostle Paul is writing this, by the way, and he's writing it to the church in Ephesus. And he says, "Be imitators of God, therefore, as dearly loved children, and live a life of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God." Those are our theme verses for the weekend. And what we learn there is that God desires that we imitate him. Now this idea of imitation, and actually the Greek word that's used here in the text when the Apostle Paul was writing this and writing it to a Greek audience, would have been a familiar term, because in Greece they were known for their great speakers and philosophers, and a lot of times they would have a time of training where they would teach people to be great speakers. And one of the concepts that was a big part of their training was teaching somebody that was learning to speak to imitate other great speakers. This idea of imitation. So if you wanted to be a great speaker, then imitate another great speaker. And so Paul took that same concept and he used that same word, and he said, be imitators of God. And he said, if you want to walk with God, if you want to live the life God's called you to live, walk with God, imitate God. And that's where he gets that concept. And so I want to just begin this weekend by just letting you know, declaring that as Christians, we are called to be imitators of God. That's our first and foremost calling. It reminds me of a few years, it's been several years ago actually, there was a college basketball player, and I can't even remember his name, but he was a guy who idolized Michael Jordan. I hope everybody knows Michael Jordan here. I know he's retired, but he's a legend. And this guy just idolized Michael Jordan. And so he would, as he was growing up and playing in high school and college, he just imitated Michael Jordan, and he got to where when he came down the court, he kind of looked like Michael Jordan. He'd hang his tongue out like Michael Jordan, and he'd move like Michael Jordan. And he got the nickname in college, Little Jordan. And I thought, what a picture of what it means to imitate God, to be an imitator of God. Wouldn't it be great if people recognized in us that we look like God, that we live our lives in such a way that we're imitating God, that we could be called Little God or Little Jesus, because our life reflects that. So that's first and foremost. We're called to be imitators. Secondly, we know that this idea of imitating God flows throughout Scripture. We see it really right away in Genesis when God creates man, because it says that God created man in his own image. That means we were created in the likeness of God. So even in our creation, there's an aspect of us. We're not God. We're never going to be God. But there's an aspect of us that is like God, and that we should then live our lives to seek to become more like him. As you think about in the Scriptures where it talks about being holy, he's we're being called to be like God, to be holy, to be set apart, and to imitate Him. And the last thing I want to say is that the perfect example for us to follow really is Jesus. Looking at the life of Jesus and looking at how He lived and how He interacted with the culture and with the people around Him. If there's great words to live by, it's be like Jesus. He is a character in Scripture. He is God. We can look to Him, and if we imitate His actions, we will be in the business of becoming more and more like God, becoming more like Jesus. Not that we're going to become God. Let us not confuse that. We're not going to ever become God or be God. But we want our life to begin to look more like the way Jesus lived. And so that's our challenge this weekend. And I want to just hand this off now to your leader in the home, and they'll have some more stuff to talk about and some discussion. And we'll just look forward to seeing you next session.